Hello there, people of the internet. If this was the 1850s, something like this right here would be like a modern cutting-edge tactical loadout, and I think that's pretty freaking hilarious. So this right here is a series of videos that I'm doing in an effort to try and earn my way up to 100,000 subscribers. I'm going through all of the things that I own, talking about why they exist, and sending lead downrange with them. In this case, I don't have any black powder, so I will not be able to actually fire this revolver in this video, so I'll have to splice in some footage of me actually firing my black powder revolvers. So hopefully this video earns you a subscription. If it does not, then hopefully I will earn it next time, because I'm doing this every single day, or at least trying my absolute best to. So we already covered our muzzle-loading musket right here. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about the revolvers. Now, handguns, like in terms of the handgun, they've been around for as long as the rifles have. However, in terms of a revolver, they operate essentially the same as the muzzleloader. The only main difference being is there are multiple chambers for the revolver as opposed to our muzzle-loading musket. So we have 6 chambers, which we load individually, one at a time, and well, they operate, like I said, basically the same way as the muzzleloader. How the muzzleloader works is you pour powder down your barrel, and you put a ball down the barrel, and you seat that ball, percussion cap on the back right here, pull your hammer back, and then you pull your trigger. Hammer drops onto that cap, makes it go bang, and that sends the round down range. In this particular case, you have that same sort of system. You pour powder down your chamber, put your ball in, you seat it with a ramrod that is built directly into the revolver itself. Not all revolvers have this, but in this particular case, this is an 1851 pattern. And then you have a percussion cap on the back of your revolver, and that right there is going to operate the same way as your muzzleloader. Once your hammer drops onto that percussion cap, it ignites the gunpowder and sends your ball flying down range. The only difference is with these multiple chambers, whenever you cock your hammer back, not all revolvers did this, but it rotates your cylinder, lining up the next chamber, which is already fully loaded and ready to go, which you can go ahead and fire downrange, and you have 6 uninterrupted shots to be able to send lead downrange 6 times before you have to reload. So there's definitely a very, what would I call it, revolutionary concept in terms of firearms technology, having multiple shots before having to reload, as opposed to the previous generation having to reload every single time that they want to take a shot, unless they have something like rotating barrels or something like that on a muzzleloader. Now, there were rotating revolving cylinder style, what would I call them, revolver style rifles. However, due to issues known as chain fires, you definitely don't want to have your hand in front of a chain firing cylinder, because that would send lead and debris and fire out from the cylinder as opposed to the end of the muzzle in this direction. And if your hand is right here holding onto the rifle, then guess what? You've officially lost that hand. That's not something that you would want to deal with, especially during the 1800s where that technology existed, because the technology of medicine did not really exist all that much. So revolving rifles did exist, but just as a safety precaution, as a safety mechanism, most people would opt to only have the single shot firing revolvers, and they would get themselves, or single shot muzzle loaders, and they would get themselves revolvers that are handguns. A lot of times people would stick stocks on these to add a third point of contact to try and get a little bit more accuracy out of these. But for the most part, you would want to avoid keeping your hand in front of a revolver cylinder. Not only do they risk chain firing, and they did chain fire regularly, but at the same time, I mean, I myself have had several chain fires. At the same time, you have gases and backblast and whatnot coming out of the cylinder gap right here every single time you fire. And if your hand is in the way of that, then guess what? You just burned your hand. Even if the revolver operates properly every single time and you don't get a chain fire, you definitely risk taking some kind of damage from something like that. Now, revolvers like this, being cap and ball, were very popular. They were popular from the 1850s all the way up to about the 1870s, although they did exist before the 1850s. Colt had several models in the 1840s and even the 1830s. However, the 1850s is whenever technology like this really began to pick up and gain in popularity. Revolvers of this style, there are all sorts of different rotating cylinder revolvers during this time period, but revolvers of this style were very popular during the United States Civil War. And it would make sense, because this right here was the optimal technology of the time period. Now, one of the main reasons why Colt continued to use this style revolver even after cartridge technology came to exist is because Smith & Wesson actually had a patent on bored-through cylinders, so Colt could not put actual cartridges inside of their revolver cylinder because they could not bore through the back of the cylinder because there was a legal patent by Smith & Wesson. They owned it, so Colt could not do it, and as a result, black powder cap and ball revolvers were held by Colt until 1871, I believe, whenever that patent expired, and then that's whenever Colt started looking into transitional revolvers and the single action army, and that's a story for another video. But this right here is where it all came from. Now, with black powder being an explosive, not a propellant, it doesn't really send projectiles downrange all that effectively, especially out of a revolver. So you would definitely want a larger caliber revolver to do more damage because the weight of the projectile, since you can't get any more velocity, is directly dictating the amount of energy that is put onto target. So a lot of times in this particular case you would see 44 and 36 caliber projectiles that would be sent downrange, but you would have bigger ones. I know Colt Walker revolvers, I can't remember the caliber on those bastards, but they are some monumentally large handguns. They are essentially, I believe that they are modeled after the Dragoon model, but they are extremely large versions, very robust versions of, well, single action revolvers that rotate cylinders. I'm pretty sure with those you load in like 60 grains of black powder, and that is a rifle charge inside of a handgun, so those are incredibly powerful revolvers, incredibly large revolvers. So combine that with a large caliber with those revolvers, and those right there were absolutely screaming. These right here are not underpowered by any stretch of the imagination. This right here, if I were to stick in about 30 grains of black powder and I were to rock around a 120-ish grain projectile, it would send that 120 grain-ish projectile from this platform right here, especially if I had a longer barrel. I know standard barrels on these were like 7.5 or 7 1/4 or something like that, about a little over 7 inches. If I were to send that 120-ish grain ball downrange with that black powder, depending on the cylinder gap and the barrel length and whatnot, you would achieve about 1,300-ish so feet per second with that projectile, and you could actually achieve faster velocities depending on, like I said, your barrel length, your cylinder gap, the type of bullet it is that you're using, the charge of your powder, especially if you go with like a lightweight projectile inside of one of those Walker revolvers, or a lightweight projectile and a rifle like this, you could achieve some pretty impressive velocities. So don't go thinking that just because this is black powder it is weak. By today's standards it definitely is weak, but it's still absolutely powerful enough to be able to get the job done. So I don't think that I have anything else to cover with these revolvers. I pretty much just wanted to go ahead and cover black powder revolvers in general, and I think that I did pretty much that. They existed, well, before the 1830s, but they became well known in the 1830s, very popular in the late 1840s to the 1850s, extremely popular all the way up until the 1870s, whenever cartridge technology was good enough to go ahead and start producing cartridge revolvers. However, that being said, of course, percussion cap revolvers didn't just disappear. As a matter of fact, this is a modern-made one. This is a Pieta-made one, I believe. But percussion cap revolvers did not just disappear, so that technology still exists, and it is still used to this day. Maybe not ideal, maybe not the most powerful, but it is, in fact, still in use. So I don't think I have anything else to add to this. We'll go ahead and we'll just jump to the next generation of weaponry. So I'm going to say, hey folks, thanks for watching. I do appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go ahead and go check that out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day, and I'll see you all on the next video.